welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Real Estate Insights and Conversations with Industry Leaders. And today I am super excited to bring to you a special guest. Been following him for a while, and I've been wanting to get him on here because just his whole persona and everything that he's about, rocking out as a leader in this industry. I think that James Knight, who is a renowned speaker, author, and training and development expert who has significantly contributed to the field of customer experience and organizational culture, is having led global training for Hard Rock International for 2 decades. Knight has mastered the art of creating rockstar teams and leaders, emphasizing organizational culture, world-class differential service, and leadership. His approach to professional speaking is characterized by a unique blend of education and entertainment, focusing on delivering valuable insights in an engaging manner. Knight's programs are tailor-made for each audience, ensuring that the content is both relevant and impactful, whether delivered in person or virtually. So, Jim, I want to thank you. I can call you Jim?
You definitely can. Yeah. I think only my mom might call me James from time to time when I'm in trouble. So Jim's perfect.
Yeah. I feel your pain at that. I certainly get that. But welcome, and I can't express my appreciation enough for you taking the time out of your schedule to come on here and be a part and to work with me on sharing some insights on leadership and customer service and building out culture in the real estate industry. People don't really think about how important these topics are, but they're probably some of the most critical things that we need to consider as real estate agents.
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you, Paul, for having me on. It's nice also because whenever I'm doing any type of video interviews or maybe a radio program or a podcast, they're usually far away from where I am. But you and I actually live in the same area in Winter Garden. We've not physically met, but I was super honored just to see the invite come from you. And, I've been lucky because I do get a chance to talk in just about every industry. That's what I do for a living. I make my living as a keynote speaker and an author, but I've done some training, some actual programming inside the real estate industry. So just by default, I've kind of learned a couple things along the way, but I think this is probably what you're going to allude to. You mentioning words like culture and service and leadership. What difference does it make what industry anyway? Like this applies to every industry. So I'm sure you're going to have some very specific targeted questions. I'm hoping I'm prepared for those, but I would say that even if it wasn't around the industry of real estate, I bet you everybody could glean a couple things from, I'm hoping, the things that you and I talk about. So it should transcend regardless of what the company or association or industry is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Especially if you're an entrepreneur at all, this will be all key information. But even if you're not, because I could tell you, just as a real estate agent, before I ever became a managing broker and before I expanded to where I'm at today, just as a real estate agent, and I changed from one office to another. I went from a high energy, high performing office into a low energy, low performing office.
Tough.
And I really had to take it upon myself as an agent to bring life and really change the culture within the office. So you don't have to be in that leadership role as a broker or something like that in order to help make a positive change in whatever the office setting is or company setting is that you're working within. Yeah, so I just want to ask you too, real quick, before we get into a couple of the other questions, real estate specific. What was it like spending 20 years with Hard Rock International? I mean, 20 years with one company is a long time. Share some of the things that you did with them and what kept you on board for that long.
Well, and I think, I've been lucky because I've sat on the certification governing board of the National Restaurant Association. So I used to get access to a lot of data. And one thing that I learned is I think they're probably up to 65% of every American will have worked in hospitality at some point. I'm using hospitality. It's restaurants, it's bars, it's hotels. So a lot of people, it's their first sort of stepping stone to work on their real career, right? You're totally right. To work at one job, but one job in hospitality is really, really tough. And I can tell you, it really was the precursor to what I do now and what I talk about now. It was the greatest culture, I think, in the history of cultures. I was so lucky to work for that brand, certainly in Central Florida, because that at the time is where their corporation was based, their world headquarters. So, I just took it as a summer job. My long and winding road started with music. I know you and I have a love of music, and we were at a music festival at the same time just this weekend. You're a musician. I actually went to school to be a musician. I do have my music performance and education degree. Then I was a middle school teacher for 6 years. I liked that. That was fun. But working at Hard Rock was really just a summer job. It was a goof more than anything else. So I could let my hair grow long and I could be ensconced in a rock and roll environment and look and say and be and do whatever I wanted to. And then I became a trainer and started traveling the world. And then ultimately I was running training and development for the organization. So, as cool as the job was itself, I got to be honest, Paul, the reason I stayed is it was so much fun being around what I consider now the greatest collection of humans I'd ever seen on the planet. Just people that were tattooed and pierced up and mohawks and colored hair, and they were pretty irreverent and unpredictable, yet they were so professional. They moved at blazing speed. They had a really good, keen sense of urgency. And just, I'm sure these people could not get a job somewhere else because of the way they acted or the way they looked. And yet here's a place I affectionately called them the island of misfit toys. This is the place where people who loved and accepted wherever they came from, but they found an island, they found a home where people totally embrace them. And as long as you performed, who cares what you look like? We just cared that you actually did the things we wanted you to do and then some. And you just, by them rocking people's face off on a regular basis, they attracted more people and guests would come through the door looking for that expectation. So, I think the long answer to your question is what I just said. The short answer is it was just the greatest environment I'd ever been a part of. And it got underneath my skin. And honestly, I knew once I got in there, as long as they accepted me for the way that I was, because my hair didn't go up back then like you can see me now. I got spiky hair. I had a long mullet that I could sit on at one point. I just found it as just the career of a lifetime. And the only way that I was ever going to leave is if I worked for myself, which is what I do now. There's no way I could ever go back to working for anybody ever again. They were just too good in so many areas. So I don't want to talk about all the stuff we did there right now, because I wanted to keep some of these answers short, but it was a culture, brother. That's really what attracted me and got me to stay there for as long as I did, 21 years.
Well, and right there, the biggest reason why culture is so important. I mean, if you want to retain good people in whatever it is that you're doing, you've got to have the culture that is going to keep people wanting to stick around, because this is a time of change. Everybody's constantly on the go and changing, and in real estate, people are constantly changing brokerages. And I try to explain, look, the grass isn't always greener, and if you're not watering your own grass, don't go on the other side of the fence because you think it's greener, and that grass is just going to end up dying too if you're not watering it. So
exactly.
So yeah, so culture is something, and we'll dive a little bit more into culture here in just a little bit. But how can real estate agents, and even maybe smaller brokerages, how can they adopt like a rock star mindset like that, right? To where they can improve team cohesion and performance, because I think that would be a great starting point for people when they're looking to increase performance. Just think about what you're doing and the environment that you're creating.
Yeah, and I love that question. Have this rock star mindset. I use a lot of that language, obviously, in everything I do. I mean, probably when I left Hard Rock and went out on my own, I do pull the levers of trying to find the balance between that education and entertainment. So I like the words, edutainment. That's sort of the mashup that I use. But so rockstar analogy is a perfect example. So thanks for the question. I do believe that there's something cool about a band and a brand analogy. So I think when you think about teams in general, if you just take a rock and roll band or whatever genre that you like, these guys and girls have to be on the same page. They got to be singing off the same sheet of music. If you have one or two people that are off doing their own thing, there's no doubt whether it's going to be super quick and implode after one song, or, you know, they're one hit Johnny or one album and that's it, or it's death by a thousand cuts. It just takes forever, but eventually they're going to implode. So I think, you know, with a team, it's even more so, because there's not really, you do an album or you do a tour and then you walk away for months or maybe a year. With a team, you're always there. So you really have to be on the same sheet of music. Now, I use that language because that could mean a lot of things, but let's say if there is no identified service philosophy, there's no name for it, there's no, here's what performance looks like. You don't talk about it, for instance, in the job description or on day one orientation, or maybe that's the only time you talk about it. It's not measured in your performance appraisals. You don't have a mission and values in place. There is no value orientation for me to sort of galvanize the whole team. It's everybody for themselves. And believe me, I've spent enough time with real estate agents that I think they probably, the really good ones, they probably don't feel like they need a lot of that stuff, and they're going to go off and do their own thing. But the ones that probably do need the development, do need the education, the future of that group, that association, that brand has got to have some leadership, some mentorship, something to sort of keep them there, versus I'm just going to look for where I can make a little bit more money, a little bit more sales with a different real estate industry company, whoever that is. So, and again, I know we're talking about real estate, but I would say anything. So my first thought is you've got to have everybody singing off the same sheet of music. That's my biggest thing. I also think that, and I was alluding to it, you've got to have everybody around a like-minded mindset when it comes to goals, mission, vision, values, performance appraisals, the job description. What's our service mentality? Are those clearly written? Are they where everybody can get a hold of that? And then I think this mindset of having a regular conversation with the team to say, how can we write ourselves into the story? How can we write ourselves into the client, the customer story? Meaning at the very end, when they're taking a picture of the new house keys and they're in front and they got the for sale sign, is the real estate agent actually in the picture? Are they sort of considered family because of the process, whether it was very quick or it took a while for somebody to make that decision, but they're probably buying the biggest ticket item of their entire lives. And it's almost like being on vacation and taking a picture of, you know, the tour guide, or in my case, the bartender or the server, because of how they made me feel. I consider them family. I can throw my arm around them. So if the team has that mentality, that's the ultimate goal. I think it helps curtail them. It helps carve out the currents and the eddies to get them where they want to be, again, versus this thing feeling very transactional. I have product, you have money, we're going to exchange, and, you know, however I can get that done, I will. I think if you take it at a different approach, the band mentality, the rock star mentality is, how can I create something so awesome you will never forget me? It's going to be so indelible, just seared into people's forehead to say, I'm going to never forget that moment. Like being at your first rock concert. We all remember that. If everybody that's watching right now or listening, everybody remembers their first concert. You know where you were, you know who you were hanging out with at that time, who you were making out with at the time. That moment will forever be sealed into your head. So I think if you have the right mentality, you can do that even when you're getting somebody to purchase the biggest ticket item they're ever going to buy. So, you know, again, a lot of this might be positive. It might be a mentality approach, but I think that's a great place to start, and you can manifest it. You can, this positive rockstar mentality to exist into something that would be tangible, that people can go, I want more of that. The next time I got to buy a house, I'm coming back to the well on that person or that company.
Absolutely. Yeah. You touched upon so many important points there. And I'm like, I'm writing it down. I'm like, wow, man, if we start diving into these points, I mean, we're going to be here for hours because there's just so much good stuff. But I like the idea of being on the same sheet of music, right? Because, you know, we can probably 99% of us can relate to things that are musically inclined or musically related, right? Because we grew up, you know, a lot of what we've learned is through singing. I know a lot of international people, they've learned English by singing songs that were done in English, didn't speak English. And so music just kind of connects people. And so comparing it that way and just thinking about, you know, what people do to be remembered, you know, the branding. I mean, yeah, you know, you've got to have really good branding in this business. Like, who are you? yes, you got your brokerage branding, but who are you in your individual branding? That's so
Yeah.
important. That should be in addition to what your brokerage has, and because it should kind of coincide and support each other. But you've got to have your own identity,
I think
and
so. Yeah,
yeah,
and real quick on that, it's interesting because I would wonder, as part of your academy, as part of what you teach, I've been around some real estate brokerages where they want everybody to represent the brand, of course, and then I'll go somewhere else and people talk about personal branding. Because I think the fear obviously is if you're really good and you wind up leaving the brokerage, you leave the brand, then are you taking all of that potential clients and future clients? Are they going to hunt you down versus coming back to insert brokerage name here? I don't think people think as much like that. I do think they do have this great experience with the individual, probably the point person more than anybody else. So the goal as a brokerage then is, what can I do to get that real estate agent to fall madly in love with the brand? This gets back to your point about creating a culture and leadership so that that person never leaves. And so it's a moot point. But if you're
right,
crappy at getting people to stay with you, well, then, whose fault is that? If I
right,
was the customer and 6 years later, I'm looking for a new house, of course, I want to have the same experience with the person, not because
yeah,
of whatever transactional incentives that you were giving me to stay with that neighborhood or whatever it is. So great point,
yeah.
but it's funny because I do see people have different opinions about that.
Yeah, so like I've been with two of the big top brands in the country, right? And it's always been a process of like I looked at it as the brokerage is my partner. Okay, we're forming a business partnership. I'm the agent, they're the brokerage. I have to work under them, but they need to give me some value for
Yeah.
whatever it is that I'm paying them for the use of that branding, right? And so I would always look at it, well, everything should be co-branded because it's me as the agent doing the work and the performance, but on behalf of the brokerage, which the brokerage is providing me with a brand that is well known, right? So sometimes people come because of the brand. They're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I just want to deal with the agent from this particular brand. We like their marketing, where it's a trusted brand. I've been working with that brand all my life and my parents, but they've used a different agent every time, right? So, but
Yeah.
they keep going back to that brand. So that's one of the advantages to partnering with a big brand name like that. But then again, yes, you mentioned it. That's, sometimes things happen in life and you've got to make a change and you're looking to maybe change brands or even update your brand. But look, I've known people staying with the same brand for 20 plus years and it's worked out really well because, there's something to be said about consistency,
Yep.
and not necessarily jumping to all these different brands. So branding yourself is I look at it as being very important because you are the one performing and doing the work and you want to be the one that is memorable, of course, forming that partnership. So you want good leadership with whoever that partner is. So
Great.
that was really good, valuable information there, and touching upon so many different things. The like-minded people thinking along the same lines, right? Being on the same page as far as whether they're on a team or even in a smaller brokerage office, right? Because sometimes you get different people into an office and you have a lot of different personalities, and we all know
Yep.
that we have some very different personalities in real estate, right? Sometimes we have some little bit on the ego side that can be challenging to work with. But sometimes offices can also have what we refer to as a cancer in the
Yep.
office, and so it requires leadership to step up and deal with the cancer that is people look at, oh my God, I can't work around this agent anymore. Yeah, they're a top producing agent, but oh my God, they're hindering my mindset, and I don't want to come in. I don't want to be a part of this. So how would you deal with in trying to keep a culture being happy and but still dealing with people? I always tell people the great thing about real estate is we get to work with people. It's fun. It's exciting. We meet really great people. And then the flip side is we have to work with people, right?
Yeah.
We end up having to work with people. We don't really want to work with the particular people, but man, it's draining, and agents won't want to, cut their losses and move on because like, well, I've already invested so much of my time and energy into this person, so I've got to see it through and get paid, right? So, but how would you address like for a smaller brokerage that has a cancer in their office, but they feel like, oh, I don't want to lose the revenue.
Well, it is a tough point, but I think at some point the really good leaders will realize that the loss in revenue is going to be temporary because it'll increase, enhance, or amp up the performance of everybody else, number one. And if it's based off of I need X number of agents that are out there or whatever, it could be somebody, if you're affiliated with the title group or the accessory room or whatever it is, it's not just the agents themselves. I think the next person that comes in to replace them, you just make it that much more of a focus that I'm going to hire only rock stars. I can't take having a lip syncer ensconced in the middle of the rest of the band, because yes, they will be unmasked. They will be discovered, as every lip syncer is. And unfortunately, if you have that cancer, and it depends on the leadership, if they started the thing, if they're the person who basically started the brokerage, they're the ones who brought all these people in, well, then it's easy because they can look at themselves and go, uh-oh, I made a huge, horrible mistake. I'm going to have to carve this person out. That's an uncomfortable conversation, but I'm going to lose that revenue. They might even be the top producer, but they're managing their own business through threats and punishment and fear and muscling the result or whatever it is that they're doing to get the number. They just might be quite good, but they're not representing the brand. And in the long term, that's going to be horrible for the organization. But let's say you inherited the person. Let's say you're a new leader and the team's already in place, but you've been able to identify who that person, that cancer is. It's the same thing. And the quicker that you can get to that, not that, I hate taking people's jobs away from them. I do. I separating from somebody, terminating somebody is the worst, but for the health of the business, you have to do it. If you leave them there, they fall, they bring the whole organization down. They're like an anchor just tumbling off a 12-story building. They pull and drag and wound everybody. You've got to cut ties with them, because everybody will have the entire, the culture will be completely disrupted. You will disrupt the harmonious environment that you're trying to create by leaving the person there. So I would start with that and just say, it's different, because back in the day, if there were just offices and meetings, I say back in the day, pre-pandemic, now there's so much distance-based remote learning, and real estate was already like that. There is still a central hub. People still are coming into an office. You've got to interact with other people, but in a lot of ways, they're islands out on their own. That goes back to what you were saying. Not only is the brand important, but their personal brand is important, and they've got to be able to have the competence and the character. But in this point, we're talking about culture fit. So those 3 C's, competence, character, culture fit, I think is now so important, which makes it even tougher for a leader, because you've got to have more communication with these people. You've got to actively go out of your way to have what I consider touch points, communicate with them, just talking on a regular basis to my boss and making it feel like this person knows me, knows my hopes and fears. I feel seen. I feel heard. If I've got an issue, I can approach him or her, whoever my leader is. So if I'm on the other side as a leader, I've got to think I need to communicate with people a little bit more often. There's certainly some other things. I got to make sure they're supported from the tools that they have. They've got updated processes and forms and the right information that we can. We're providing education, which, before you and I even started, we were talking about some of the things that real estate agents struggle with. And part of it is, I don't think they go out of their way to educate themselves enough. I think they get set up in one environment, and they, maybe it's through the school of hard knocks, they figure out things as they go. But if a leader was to provide them with actual training and development for the betterment of them as an agent, even if I have a fear they're going to leave and go somewhere else at some point, I want them to look back fondly and talk about the brand fondly, because I helped develop them. Well, that's one of the things as a leader that I should do. Is it going to cost a little bit more money? Sure. Is it a pain in the butt to carve them out of a sales, environment and put them in an education environment for a day or a couple days? Absolutely. But they're going to be better off because of that. In real estate, people love rewards and recognition. I know real estate agents are hungry, man. They would much prefer the dollars, but getting a certificate, getting an attaboy, getting some sort of a gift, an incentive, I don't care if it's small and little on a regular basis, or you beef up and every quarter there's something big, that actually makes a huge difference. So I'm not sure leadership thinks about these things. They don't sit back and go, boy, here's some things I need to do. I need to communicate more. I need to provide education more. I need to think about rewards and recognition a little bit more. I need to have a philanthropic mindset. We don't talk about this in real estate, but I love it. When I'm working with any company, I don't care what it is, particularly when it comes to retail or sales in general, and they're giving back a portion of their proceeds to some philanthropic cause. I think when people to help out others that are less fortunate, you know what you get with me? Loyalty. I am definitely coming back to the well because you're doing something that you don't have to do. And so real estate, but I would say this about any industry, they got to figure out whatever that philanthropic cause is. But I love when people are giving to charity. Maybe they've got to do it in a very innovative way. So I don't know. Those are 3, 4 things that I would just think about that a leader probably could do. But I know your initial question was around that cancer. I think you've got to carve those people out. You got to suck it up. And just unfortunately, you're going to miss those sales. But you just make sure that you've got somebody who's going to bring the thunder when they come in and take over for that person, and then they fit into the organization. And so every leader has to deal with that. I hope it's not a lot of them. I hope it's just the one person. Everyone's going to be so much happy. They will throw a party when that person ultimately is gone. And that's unfortunate, but it's the truth.
And, there's a cost in every office. There was a cost per agent. And so agents were costing me more than what they were bringing in for the brokerage. So by losing those people that were costing me money, it helped me to increase profits and then of course increase everything going on in the office as far as in a positive way. And it made it easier to recruit new people to the office as well. Because when I got in there, one of the things that they said was, Paul, as I was trying to recruit people, Paul, your office is the office where people go to die. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then I realized what the average age of the agent was in the office. I'm like, wow, we need to change this. And so I had to make some changes in the way I was recruiting and start pursuing, a younger crowd, because this is not my perception of what this office should be. I was trying to recreate the office that I wanted as an agent, which was a high energy office that was very productive and people work together, right? I love good camaraderie. I love when people collaborate together, right? I don't want people to fear that, I can't tell them what I'm doing because I don't want them to steal my business. No, it's like everybody work together, because as everybody works together, I believe in the synergy of 1 + 1 = 3. So let's work together, and, rising tide will raise all ships.
There's another side to it too. And you were talking about this when you were alluding to the one company buying three different cultures coming together. And I see this in mergers and acquisitions in a variety of industries, but take real estate as an example, or in my world in hospitality, you might have president, a CEO, or directors of operation who have multiple properties that they're responsible for. So in your case, you may have been talking about the one bad real estate agent. Let's say the problem is actually with the leader. The team's great, but the leader is not creating this awesome culture that rocks that we talk about. But they, unless they're the standalone entrepreneur and they're the girl or guy who started the thing, they have a boss as well. So I've seen this many, many times that somebody has to sit that person down and say, there's got to be some changes. I clearly remember one of my general manager friends who of a restaurant who was in fact muscling the results. The way he treated people to get the results, he was getting results, but it was basically tearing the entire culture of that four-walled restaurant down. And his boss came to him and put him on what we now affectionately call the program. And the program was, you had to sit down with every single employee, every single one of them in that environment. Now, in that restaurant, there were probably 40, 50 people. I don't remember the number, but you had to sit down with every single one of them and ask them one question, and that's it. And the question was, how do I make you feel? How am I doing for you is basically the question. No other questions. It doesn't matter what they say. You couldn't fire them. You couldn't respond with any type of venom, couldn't defend yourself. You just had to listen to their feedback. Every single employee. Now, the majority didn't say anything the first time. And when he got through, his boss made him do it a second time, then a third time, and then a fourth time. At some point, they start to open up and go, this is how you make me feel. You say this, you do that. And it was quite humbling. So before, instead of him driving hardcore those results, he had to take on a more servant leadership mentality. What can I do for you? And it changed his entire leadership approach, because he was probably going to be successful at that one restaurant, but at the behest, all of these great, awesome employees that were going to go somewhere else. And he was eventually going to have an issue, but for sure, he would not ever get promoted to take on more responsibility. So in the real estate industry, I think as you see these mergers as a couple cultures, especially if they're small mom and pop or smaller brokerages, it might not be the real estate agents. It might be the leader has got to think differently about his or her mentality, and they're going to have to go out of their way to be more supportive, more of a listener than just talking and driving their own agenda. Maybe it is more about education and having the right tools and what can I do to remove obstacles to help you get to where you need to be. Maybe I need to think differently about my personal brand, these things that you and I have already talked about. So that's just me sort of weaving in this point of, it's not always going to be the agent. I think whoever's right now watching this discussion that we're having, it could be them. They got to look in the mirror and go, everybody's a leader. I'm a leader. Maybe I need to change my own attitude and mentality about creating this environment so that I can walk off into the sunset, these awesome group of people. I'm the problem. It's me. Look at me. I'm quoting Taylor Swift now. I knew
That's all right.
we were going to quote some artist.
Yeah, and she's got a lot of things that can be quoted.
True. Yeah.
So yeah,
that'll be my only one, I promise, today.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. We welcome all. But there are a lot of people in the leadership role that maybe shouldn't be, or that need to learn more about that role. And it is unfortunate. And John Maxwell has a book on that. It's like, leadership for those that can't lead, or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, I've worked under some people like that. And look, when I got put into that role, being a managing broker, which I never really pursued, but the timing was right in my life for like, oh, well, tell me more. I actually, started a self-directed education on leadership. I'm like, okay, I need to learn how to be a better leader in this role, and also how to be a better coach in this role so that I can best serve my agents. And most of the agents that work with me, they were a good core group, and they loved my approach, and they loved what I did, and they were great agents. But there were also those that worked with me that probably felt I wasn't the best leader. And I always strive to do better. I strive for excellence, but again, it's not always going to be the best match, because some people prefer to be low key. I prefer to be high energy. I want that energy in the office, and I think people feed off of that. So that tended to be my approach. So let's touch on just one more thing here, because we can go on for hours with this, and I certainly appreciate it, and I want to respect your time. But how can the principles of differentiated service be applied to the real estate industry to stand out in a crowded market?
Yeah. And again, maybe only because I've been exposed a little bit to the real estate industry. I think in terms of before the sale, during the sale, and after the sale. And I think there's certainly some things that you could do before. And I say like right before somebody walks in, they're just looking through the model homes or whatever it is. I think if a real estate agent is worth their weight in salt, and they've already captured their cell phone number, they've already got a communication conduit with that person, whether they're filling out a form or just, hey, how can I get your number? That there's some texting, there's some conversations. Hey, just wanted to follow up with you. I know you guys just walked through the homes. Again, I would think some people would say that's not the trigger that gets me to start working a lot more, because you're going to have hundreds of people that will come in perhaps on a weekly, or for some places, it might be on a daily basis. You would think, what a waste of time, but it's not. I think that's how you start to build that relationship with the ultimate customer. So there's that. And maybe we'd even go before that. I had a program that was here in Central Florida called Certified Rockstar, and it was a training program. We did it for real estate agents. And one of the things that my business partner and I were talking about is, what could you get into somebody's head before they even thought about selling their house? And one thing is, we created a door hanger that basically we would hang on somebody's door in a neighborhood, but only one house. And the door hanger would actually say something like this house rocks. Out of all the houses in this neighborhood, yours is the one that we love. It's a rock star house. When you even think about selling your house, it deserves a rock star agent. I would be honored to be the person represent, but I don't do this with every house. Yours is the one we picked. You figure out short and sweet text, but think about as a homeowner getting this, and your head would get so big. You'd love the fact that somebody shined a spotlight on you, but you're not selling your house until you actually do. 4 or 5 years, who cares? They're going to come back to you. So I think there are some things that you can do before the actual sale itself. Then I think about during. I go, sometimes it takes a while. It takes weeks, it takes months, even though there might be some incentives that you're trying to do, some client incentives. It might be, we're going to give you $30,000, $40,000 buyback worth of incentives to get you to stay here versus going to the next neighborhood. Or maybe we're going to pick up all of the closing costs. And we know that Joe Schmo isn't doing that. Is that going to cost the brokerage more money? It is. But if you're looking at it in volume and depending on the sale of the house itself, you could get away with some things like that. I think those, reminders need to happen every once in a while, whether it's in a text or an email or even just verbally. But I think you could even do some personalized handwritten cards if you've got the address of the person that could go to the potential client. Maybe the sale's not going to happen, but you did. Here's an even easier one, I think. $5 Starbucks or Chick-fil-A or Ulta or whatever, $5 gift cards in a personalized note. You haven't even bought the house yet, but somehow you've already built into your budget. Okay, I'm going to spend, again, I'm making this up, Paul, but let's say it's $100 a day on gift cards. That is going to matter to somebody at some point down the road, but you just build it into the actual sale itself, where is it a little bit off the top line? Yeah, but it's going to make a huge difference in them, not only with the sale, but coming back. I think about after the sale, people are going to send the generic gift basket that might be sitting, on the kitchen counter, or it's, I don't know, at the front door or whatever it is. It's the same thing that every, real estate agent buys. I go, what if you actually personalize, customize, individualize that gift? What if at some point during our relationship, I knew that there's a big oak tree out there and you were talking about this is going to be great for my kids to have a swing? What if you actually put a swing? I'm just talking about a rope with a wooden, something that could be easily taken down if it wasn't what the client wanted, but you went ahead and did that and it was there when you moved in. What if you heard them and you found out they were faith-based and they maybe mentioned some sort of a Bible verse and you're like, okay, note to self, somewhere in that house, you're putting, let's say, a framed quote. Or you could be really gutsy. I know a real estate agent who actually put this on the wall. They hung this short Bible quote on the wall going up the stairs. Now, as a homeowner, you might be saying, that's the stuff I'm going to put in this gift basket or the gift that I'm going to do for them. Something that they go, this person knows me, thought about me, understands me. And it wasn't just the generic, I made a sale, I'm getting a commission and moving on. So I think there's probably a litany of things that you and I, if we sat down, I could think about. These are just off the top of my head. But if I think, what can I do pre, during, and after? These are all designed to get people to think fondly of me at some point after the sale. Or if it doesn't happen, I'm going to come back because I remember how this person made me feel. So, that's what Service That Rocks looks like to me. I am just all day long, I am looking for people to do something different with me. I am just hopelessly looking for people to create something that is unique to me. And like I said, I don't care what it is, but I do know you're going to get loyalty with me. And I got a loud mouth. I'm going to jump on social media, or I'm going to write about it in a book, or I'm going to talk about it in front of a couple thousand people when I'm on stage and use you or your company as an example. And that's how that word of mouth just sort of spread. So I know I said a lot. That's a long answer to your question, man, but I think there's a lot of things that people could do to create differentiation, but they don't think about it because they're just trying to move on to make it a transactional sale and go to the next one. And if somebody isn't even looking like they're going to buy, I need to cut losses and move on. And I get that. There's a sense of urgency in real estate, but man, I think you can make people fall madly in love with the brand just by your interaction with them on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, definitely not forgetting about them after the sale, which so many agents do. It becomes a transactional thing. And then it's like sales done. It's like, okay, we're done. They move on. They might have intentions of doing something more, but they just, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So, it's just,
Exactly.
so yeah. So having something memorable, something useful like that, I think is wonderful. You mentioned some great things there in regards to, especially you going for the final walkthrough and they talked about, a swing or a Bible verse. And then all of a sudden this appears, in their house as they're doing their final walkthrough. And it's like, oh, there it is, and they go to closing and it's taken care of for them. And that is forever memorable.
Yeah.
And it is, doing the things that are going to help people remember who you are. because you made them feel special. And so many people are talking, worried about the pre, right? What can I do up front so that I can gain the customer and gain the sale?
Yeah.
And that's important too. It's got to go throughout the entire process and beyond that. And so that was, a wealth of information there that you shared, and I appreciate that. And Jim, I want to thank you so much for your time today. So if somebody wants to reach out to you to learn more about any of your trainings, or pick up your book, or maybe hire you for a keynote, what's the best way for somebody to reach you?
Yeah, all roads go through my website, which is knightspeaker.com. It's my last name, Knight, speaker.com. And you'll see video. I've got a reel up there. All my books are up there. I don't know that I want something hammered into the wall, but you make it an easy adhesive. You do something that can be easily taken down, but enough that, wow, my agent thought about that stuff. If they were a reader, if they were a music lover, whatever, some of the other things that I've sort of dabbled in, but for the most part, as a speaker and an author, that's my jam. So listen, I would love to hear from anybody at all, even if you just have a few questions and maybe I was saying too much or talking too fast. I'd be honored to help out. And again, man, this is really an honor to just be asked to be on your video discussion. And I hope people glean some insights. I hope it resonates with them.
I'm sure it will, because everything that you said makes total sense. You said it in a way that should be very understandable for people. All of your information will be also in the description below if you're watching this video, so that they can gather that information, get the link to your website and so on. But yeah, no, this was very insightful. And as I said, Jim, I said we can actually go on for hours on this topic, I think, because you have so much insight on it. And I think that, the industry needs more focus on some of these topics to really make a positive impact moving forward, and how to differentiate yourself as an agent. That is a leader that focuses on customer service, that people will pick up on that, right? That'll just come across as a natural thing where people will recognize that. They may not know exactly what it is, but it's like, it's just going to resonate with them, like, oh my God, yeah, this is somebody I want to work with. And so, yeah, so this has really provided some great insight, and very much appreciated.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. And hopefully we'll see you down the road.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. We'll get together in downtown Winter Garden and have a coffee. Talk some
We will,
more.
man. Rock on.
All right, Jim. Thanks so much. Rock on.